In our opinion, and I think we've been pretty outspoken on this from day one, we think that all of this is political. We know it's political. It's nothing but political. I think there are some different nuances to that, but whether it be votes or political campaign promises that were made. But I think everybody saw what happened just prior to the last election, where we saw President Obama suddenly, after doing nothing for 4 years, coming out and, for the purpose of that election, trying to come out and make some of these drastic changes. I mean, we actually saw in the agency, we had people, in ICE headquarters telling us that managers were coming out and saying that we've got so many days. These are ICE headquarters managers in a law enforcement agency saying we've got so many days before the election to get these pro-legalization, pro-amnesty, pro-illegal immigrant type policies out there. We've got to get it done, and we've got to get it done now. I mean, they literally had countdowns to the election to, as a deadline to get these policies put in place, these policies that would be publicly favorable during the election period. So we absolutely know that this is all about politics. The AFL-CIO, La Raza, and the Chamber of Commerce wrote this, and that law enforcement officers had absolutely no part in doing this. I mean, we've been very vocal about this. We asked the White House a long time ago to be involved in the immigration discussions and development. No response. We asked the Gang of Eight to be involved in these discussions. No response. We had border sheriffs, sheriffs from all over the country come up to DC last week to talk to the Gang of Eight. We held 2 different meetings on 2 separate dates to talk about, to not just have Chris Crane on the ICE side talk about these issues, but to have these border sheriffs come up here and sheriffs and law enforcement from around the country. Not one member of the Gang of Eight came to one of those meetings to hear those officers, but they've got time to sit down with the AFL-CIO and the Chamber of Commerce and La Raza to write our nation's laws on immigration enforcement. So it's very clear, it should be very clear. I mean, people shouldn't even have to read this legislation to know that it's got a lot of problems when that's the approach of Congress. And I actually talked about this in my testimony yesterday, that we don't ever come out and say, well, you should restrict anybody from being within these discussions. But when Congress has illegal aliens come to Congress and testify, and then they bring groups in that represent the interests of illegal aliens to develop our laws, and they exclude American citizen law enforcement officers that work within this broken system every day and arguably know more than anybody else about it and what it's going to take to fix it, they exclude us. To the point that, I went to a press conference last week with the Gang of Eight, and I very politely waited until the question and answer period, and I put my hand in the air, and I said, Senator, will you take a question from law enforcement? And they just kind of gave me a dirty look. And they answered the question. I did this, I politely waited. I didn't try to talk over them. I did it 2 or 3 times. And I was escorted out by police in our own, the House of the People, a Senate office building. As a United States citizen, a federal law enforcement officer, I did nothing wrong. I talked over no one. And they had police come like I was some kind of criminal and escort me out of the building. As a veteran, as a citizen, I can't tell you, I can't express. I'm getting choked up a little bit now talking about it. It was definitely a disappointing day for me, to the point where even after we left that room, I had to ask, am I being arrested? Am I being detained? They wouldn't give me answers. They wouldn't tell me what was happening. They were ordering me that I had to come with them. It was really out of control. And again, as I said during my testimony, these folks in this room spoke to me with such hatred and such anger. And it really became clear to me at that point Before I thought, these folks just don't want to hear our position on it because it doesn't mesh with their overall game plan. But what I saw in there was something completely different. What I saw were Senate staffers and people involved in this that have a real hatred, I think, for law enforcement. And that was, like I said, it was a very disappointing day for me.
You know certain things based on your job and what your role is in this set of laws. When you come to Washington and you see the games going on to pass a bill and you can't get your facts in the door, what does that tell you? What's going on here that you can't break through?
Well, first of all, I would say that I want to be clear. There are senators and congressmen out there who have been meeting with us and who are supportive of law enforcement. Senator Jeff Sessions has been one of our strongest allies. Senator Grassley, of course, Senator Vitters and others, Congressman Steve King. These folks have, really been proponents of, and I need to definitely say Congressman Lou Barletta. These folks have really been concerned about what's happening to federal law enforcement, regardless of the immigration issues at hand. But I can't say that I fully understand what's happening. All I can tell you is that the appearance to me is something very dishonest. That these folks have an agenda and they don't want to hear from America. They think that they know better than Americans know. It's almost like someone used the term the other day, a ruling class, and that really kind of hit home with me. That's the feeling that I get, that, where is the American part of this republic now? Where is this by the people, for the people part of our government anymore? Because I'm sure as heck not seeing it up here on Capitol Hill. It's discouraging at best, and I wish every American. I say this a lot about my job on the immigration side. I always say, well, I wish every American could walk in the shoes of an immigration agent every day, through the jails, through the prisons, so that they could see the truth beyond the rhetoric that's out there about how serious this immigration problem is. And at the same time, when I come up here on my vacation, I go through the halls of Congress. I wish they could see and hear what I see and hear. I think that on some points, it would make them feel better about their Congress at a time when there's an 80% disapproval rating, because they could see that there clearly are people up here that do care. They genuinely care about what's happening in America, that they have staff that work for them that also care, that all of them together work very, very long hours, that they're working day and night and weekends. I wish Americans could see all of those things, but I also wish that they could see that there's something I would describe as very dark happening here as well, that's not what Americans want. And I think it would be in particular helpful in those areas where these individuals are from, that people could see how they really act and how they behave. And I think that regardless of maybe a feeling from their constituents that they share their political views, I think those constituents would be ashamed of what their leadership is doing. And I think, by and large, we see that the American public is very supportive of their military. We see, by and large, that they're very supportive of their law enforcement folks, their first responders, all of those people. So I think that if they could see firsthand the attitude that some of these folks up on the Hill take toward law enforcement officers, I think they would be appalled. And I think it would be a real attitude changer, and I think some people would be leaving office, quite frankly.